Welcome into the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, for listening to us on 93.9 The Ville in Louisville, or listening to us Google Play or your iPad right now. We are at episode number 30. Woo. With me, as always, Mr. Thomas Kenny, our researcher. Scott Hall on lead guitar, on bass, Ben Chaffins. We're glad that you're joining us. Again, we appreciate all the support. We're having fun. We hope you are as well. We guess you are, or else you wouldn't be tuning in. And now we're in 17 countries. We've been downloaded in 17 countries. Ben, what are the latest 2 countries we've added?
We had Lebanon and Pakistan.
Wow, how about that? So 17 countries, and of course we go nationwide as well. Coming here from what has affectionately been called by some, Lenny Schulman of the Blood Horse dubbed it, actually, the bunker, to bring you the latest in horse racing fun and information. Today we've got a couple of guys that a little different take on things today. I believe that they'll give us a lot of interesting information. Veteran jockey Willie Martinez, he's been riding for 30 years. Has over 3,500 victories, is in that ballpark. He's had a very solid career. He's also taken a stand for jockeys over the years, for insurance, for health concerns. We'll talk to Willie about that. Then we're going to talk to one of the young lions in the business. You know, some guy that is ambulatory. No, I'm kidding. I mean, he is, but, you know, some of these guys, let's face it, they've been around this sport a long, long time. Some of these people that run the deals, they cling to the fact that it's the 1950s and 60s, and horse racing and baseball and boxing are the 3 biggest sports, which was the case long before actually any of us were born.
That's right.
That's how long ago it was. But Bret Jones, who is runs the bloodstock for Airdrie Stud, and he is on the Breeders'Cup Board, among other things, and he is young and bright, and he will be joining us actually live here in the studio. Well, Mr. Thomas, by the way, does your family know that you've changed? Your mom and dad have to call you Mr. now? Is this official? Have you gone to the birth certificate and changed it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I enforce it.
Good for you. Well, Mr. Thomas, we're talking about Airdrie Stud, a very solid farm. They've been around for a long time. They produced several Grade 1 winners, won classics. We'll talk with Bret more about that later. But you've been doing some research on farms in general and some of the successes and the impact they've had in horse racing.
That's right. You know, a lot of horse farms have a claim to fame, right?
Right.
But some horse farms, Calumet and Claiborne, are the ones that I looked at the most over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Have not 1, not 2, but 9 and even 10 claims to fame as far as Kentucky Derby winners go.
Yeah.
Right? Calumet hasn't had a Derby winner since, I believe, 1968 was the last one.
Dancer's Image.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dancer's Image.
The controversial one up until this year. When they took forward pass down and put him up a few days later, yeah.
But, so Calumet has won 9 Kentucky Derbies, horses that they sired and owned at the time. You know, looking back to one of our earlier episodes, you referred to them as probably the first dynasty of horse racing.
Right.
And then Claiborne Farm, not necessarily owning all the horses that they've sired to win derbies.
Right.
But they've had 10 winners under their belt. Most recently, Orb in 2013.
That they had a part of as a breeder or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, that, and again, that's a powerhouse that goes back to Mr. Hancock, the legendary Bull Hancock, and carried on with his son Seth, and Calumet over the years, the Wright family. Mr. Wright, by the way, was inducted recently into the Hall of Fame as one of the pillars of turf. Long overdue, and glad they finally did this. And, you know, they're kind of catching up. I understand that. But Brad Kelly is a guy that owns Calumet now. And he's had horses in there. They've had some success. He's kind of revitalized things. And he's reclusive. You just don't see him out at the track.
Is that right?
I may have met him and not even known I met him. And that's okay. You know, he redefines low profile. One year, always at NBC, we have pictures associated with the horses. So for our spotters that are there, they're looking, especially for owners, the trainers we got, the jockeys we got, but we have their pictures as well. But it's kind of nice. You look down there and you would see Orb and you'd see trainer Shug McGahee, or something, or obviously, who Bob Baffert and Mike Smith are, but you'd have the owners as well. And I remember one year they sent a picture of Brad Kelly in. I don't know who they would be. I'm assuming Calumet. I think it was kind of funny. And they put that picture there and I'm looking at it and go, anybody ever remember something called the Smith Brothers cough drops? You can look it up. Where the guys had those beards that hung down to their chest. And I said, that's not Brad Kelly. That's taken off like a Smith Brothers cough drop ad from like 1938, which I thought was pretty funny. Or maybe it was him, but if so, he looks like a Smith Brothers cough drop ad from like 1938. Look that up if you want.
It's like a modern day Great Gatsby then, right?
Yeah, he could be in ZZ Top.
Okay.
Yeah, he could be right there with Dusty and Billy, and Frank all rocking it. ZZ Top.
Nice.
Interesting with them, the only guy that doesn't have facial hair is a guy named Frank Beard, their drummer.
That's right.
There's our trivia question of the day. That has nothing to do with Calumet Farm or Claiborne Farm. But again, you mentioned those names and you automatically know, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
You probably, as a guy that's learning the business more, I know your background's car racing and baseball and gaming, but you probably heard of Calumet and Claiborne just kind of growing up. Just accidentally you came across those names.
Yeah, born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, lived here all my life. Definitely heard of Calumet, heard of Claiborne. Among others, WinStar, another one that I've heard of.
Right.
Before getting involved in this show and learning about the horse business.
Are you learning about it in this show? Scott, Ben, are you guys learning anything from this show?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Every day.
Every day. But that's it. And, they had those distinctive colors, that gold, yellowish gold of Claiborne. And, of course, they changed the colors. Used to be that, the red and blue of Calumet, the red, you drive by out there out near Keeneland, if you're ever in the Lexington, Kentucky area, and you see Calumet Farm out there that still has the red and white and got the white fences that, it's kind of like the quintessential. If you don't know much about horse farms, you have this image and you come to visit Lexington and you pull out of Bluegrass Airport, it's hard to miss Calumet Farm.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Thomas and I had that exact conversation last Wednesday.
Without me present.
Without you present, driving by, and I said, gosh, I love those white fences, man.
It is. Yeah. That's kind of sums it all up, doesn't it? Okay. Anything else we need to add about the horse business, about the farms?
I've seen guys out painting the white fences before. Just driving by, when I was a young boy on my way to school.
Yeah. That's a tough job. You start thinking about keeping up a horse farm. We'll talk to Brett a little more about that when he comes in here. But just all the things around it, the landscaping, the feed companies that have to come in, the veterinarians that come in, the blacksmiths. Horse farm is a big part of certainly Kentucky from what the other employment that they have out there. And probably other places, Maryland, Florida, some places like that, California, mostly ranches out there. But yeah, if you have horses and they're on your farm or ranch, then it's just not you and them and the farm or ranch. You got to bring a lot of people. We're going to bring in Bret Jones when we come back. He'll join us here in the studio. Later on, we'll talk with veteran jockey Willie Martinez, get his take on what's going on now in the jockey colony. Has improvements been made since he took a stance at one time that got him booted out of Churchill Downs for a bit? All that coming up on this episode 30 worldwide. It is the Horse Racing Show. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. This is episode number 30. Thank you for tuning in. Especially thank you for liking and subscribing to us on YouTube. As we have told you many times, that's really big. You can even subscribe to us if you don't watch it all the time, because that helps out as far as moving up in that atmosphere I don't know about, Scott Hall.
That's right.
You know what it is. You and Ben and Thomas know that world. I just talk and get great guests like the one we have now. I have known him since he was a very young man and proud of his success and watched him grow up in the business from Airdrie Stud. He takes care of all their bloodstock. He is on the board of the Breeders' Cup as well as the Kentucky State Racing Commission. He is Bret Jones. Bret, good to see you.
Hey, Kenny. Great to see you, buddy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Look at you. Every time I look, you've added like another thing. You know, you're on these boards, and you're one of the young lions, as I said earlier in the introduction of this show, that I think racing needs, and to try to get a few more people to pay attention to the sport.
Well, I think one of the reasons that I'm on a few boards is that there are a lot of people that recognize that we need to get young people in and involved in the decision-making process, and unfortunately there just aren't a whole lot of us, so they grab the one that seem to be available. So I don't know if it's any of my own merits, but I sure try to do my best and help out where I can.
Of course, you grew up in the business. Your father, Brereton, well-respected breeder and owner, former governor of Kentucky. I mean, was it a natural you were going into the business? Was there ever a discussion that you might take another path and not even stay around the farm?
That discussion didn't come till much later, and I've told this to several people over the years, but there was never even an ounce of pressure applied to me by Dad to go into the business. And looking back, I'm so thankful for that, because I think if you push, and you know, I have 3 sons myself, I'd love for them to be in the business. I love the business. We want that continuity, but if you push and it's not there, it just doesn't work. And I think there've been probably some cases of that, and that's really hard, because there is a pressure to do what the family business is. But I just never had that. I always loved it. I fell in love with racing very early on in my life, going to Keeneland, growing up around the horses. All the things that make horse racing great, I was exposed to very early. And I made that decision that this is what I want to do for a living. And that's once I gave up my basketball dreams in about 5th grade. Then once the NBA was out, then horse racing was in, and there was no looking back.
If you grow up in Kentucky, you have to have a basketball dream.
Yeah, I think that's it's embedded in you, and but unfortunately you don't have the my limitations were substantial, and I was
as were most of ours.
Right.
We know.
And once you come to that awareness, then you better find something else, and thankfully horse racing was there.
Bret, here's my take on this. You mentioned, I think, about the way you grew up. You were not pressured into it, even though your father was very successful and well-known in the business. You didn't have to go into that business. Sometimes I think, and I don't want to be as critical as this is probably going to sound right off, but you know, when the Breeders' Cup or the NTRA are talking about bringing in new people, immediately they want to teach them about gambling. And my take on it all is, why don't you introduce them a little bit to some of the people in the business, or a little bit of the history of the business. And sure, that's obviously what's going to drive the industry down the road. You want them to come out there. If they're not going to have enough money to go buy a horse, you want them to come and gamble on one. But you know, if you go out early and you lose like $20 and you're in college, or $50, you might say, well, I don't want to ever go back to that place, man. $50, you know how long in college I could live on $50 for like 6 weeks. That was a few years back. I imagine it's, probably a few days now. But you know what I'm saying? Maybe I would like to see more emphasis on the excitement of the sport, even the danger that the jockeys go about, because, this UFC stuff gets a lot of attention because of the danger and the excitement. And I don't think there's anything more dangerous than what the jockeys go through each day. And, that might generate some interest for them.
Yeah, no question. And listen, we can't kid ourselves. Gambling dollars are what fuel this industry. Without that, there is not that we don't get to do what we love to do. But that exposure to the right kind of exposure and the right kind of experience when it's your first time at the track. It's why Lexington has always been able to cultivate a following, because we all grew up going to a place like Keeneland. We had that great exposure. We had that a great experience where people loved where they were, loved having fun. You associated the track with a great time. And, there's some people that would enjoy that and move on, but there were a lot of people that probably filed away somewhere in their subconscious, I'd like to have a racehorse someday. Look how much fun this group is having. And this is not new territory, but any interview, it seems like you do with people who are in the game, and you'll say, well, how did you get your start? Well, my grandfather took me to the races, or I grew up going to Keeneland, or I grew up going to, someplace in the Northeast that may not even be there anymore, but that stays with them. And if you can expose people and show them that good time, and also show them the behind the scenes, like you said, with the jockeys, with the trainers, where they have that appreciation for all that goes into it and the love that everybody has for these horses, then you've got a fan. And like you said, the gambling comes from that. And that, excuse me, but once you have that appreciation for it, and then you want to learn more and more, and then you get the confidence to gamble as resources may come to you later in life, then you've got both a fan and a gambler, and that's a home run.
They got to give you more money and let you handle the PR department, the Breeders' Cup. For all those listening at the Breeders' Cup, that's just my opinion. We're talking with Bret Jones, Airdrie Stud, Breeders' Cup Board, Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. Wow, you're on two things this year that probably made the biggest news. Well, you're on one thing for sure, the Racing Commission. I don't know if there's ever going to be a bigger decision made than the Derby decision made by the stewards, which I'd never criticize. I think they made the right decision. I know that there's litigation going on. I don't know how much you can say. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but they'll be talking about this forever. This lawsuit, I hope, doesn't go on forever, but it might. I don't know. But just the commission feeling toward the stewards and everything after all was said and done, Bret.
Sure. Well, nobody likes the guest who goes on the show and tells the host that they can't say much. But when you're entrenched in an issue like that, then you really can't say much. But what I certainly would agree with you with, it was a very memorable Derby, and I've been so happy to see Maximum Security come back and run the big race that he did. Gary and Mary West have become, quite honestly, friends over the last few years because we have a horse together in American Freedom that we stand at Airdrie Stud that they race with Bob Baffert, a horse we believe very strongly in. So it can be tough how your different positions in the industry can conflict with the others, but I certainly root for those guys. I root for Maximum Security, and I hope that he can be one of the really great stories in horse racing going forward, and I think he's capable of doing that.
You handled that well. Without a legal background, you handled that well.
All right. I'm sure I got myself in trouble somewhere in there.
Now, you know what? Because, look, I know the deal right afterwards. Everybody was waiting, and we're trying to communicate with the stewards, and there was trouble, and everybody's running around, and I see Bill Mott standing there, and I thought, I get back on the, we can talk to our producer. I say, I got Bill Mott here. This guy might win this Derby now. I would have never thought that 6 minutes ago, but as it continued to go on, so we interviewed that. So, it was uncharted waters for everyone involved and still is. And, too, I'm happy that Maximum Security came back and won the Haskell. And, it's always good. And what's really impressive to me, though, if you think about it, they made the big deal. It was the first time since Grindstone because of his injury in '96 that we didn't have a Derby winner going on. And I said, but think of that streak. That's pretty impressive that you've had that many Derby winners in a row go on to the Preakness, that there wasn't some kind of injury or hiccup along the way.
Yeah, it is. And then that's probably bucking the expectation because we all know how things can go wrong or horses need a little bit more time. But not only have they come back in that second leg, they've ran very, very well. I mean, so many have come back and won the Preakness or represented themselves well.
Bret, as far as the Breeders' Cup Board, another big decision this year that got a lot of attention is where's this race going to be? Obviously, it was scheduled and will remain at Santa Anita, but you guys had to go behind closed doors and have a meeting to decide where the Breeders' Cup, would it stay at Santa Anita? Was that a tough decision to make for the group as a whole?
Well, again, I'm going to do the horrible thing where I can say I can only say so much about that, but yes, everybody knows that it was a controversial process to get there, and not controversial, but interesting. I mean, when you've got to consider all of the factors. But I will say that I think the Breeders' Cup made the exact right decision. I think what Santa Anita is doing going forward, not looking back, but going forward, the safety protocols that they're putting in place, the things that they are doing to make racing safer. And as a result of that, you're seeing so many of these other tracks adopt that. And you're seeing communication between the racetracks that I don't think, certainly in my lifetime, I've never seen. And seeing track operators that may not have had a whole lot to say to one another, saying, how can we make this thing better for everybody, be it safety, be it all the different decisions that go into promoting your racing product. So I think there's a lot of positives that are coming out of a very, very difficult situation. And there will be, there'll be a heightened sense there, Breeders' Cup weekend, but I think Santa Anita is doing everything right to make sure that The track is as safe as humanly possible, and Breeders' Cup will do everything possible. And that's really been an amazing thing, being part of the Breeders' Cup and seeing all that goes into kind of, when you pull back the curtain and you see just how hard they work to ensure that we've got the safest possible track, and to make sure that any horse that has a hiccup that they think could possibly put them in a dangerous situation, they're taken out of that situation. So that's very comforting, and let's just hope we've got a great racing product there that weekend, which I sure think we will.
Personally, I'm glad it's staying at Santa Anita. I'm glad the vote of confidence to me. It's one of the iconic places. You start naming tracks, and we can debate Keeneland, Saratoga, Santa Anita, but it is one. To me, as I said, it'd be like the Yankees make the World Series this year, and you can't play any of the games at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I heard you say that, and it's an incredible backdrop. And if you've never seen it, it's a bucket list item, because to see a racetrack there with the mountains behind and the quality of horses there, it's unreal. Well,
now, what are some of your favorite moments with your dad, or just with Airdrie Stud, now or in the past, as a young Bret Jones was growing up to be successful like he is now? Do you have like a horse or two or three that really jump out, a moment, which may not always be a big race? Sometimes people just have a moment. There's a horse that they didn't know was even going to be able to win a grade 3, and they did,
Yeah, I think if we I'd say if we had horses for the next 100 years, Proud Spell would always be my favorite horse that we've ever been associated with. She was just so likable, and if you don't know, she was the filly we had that won the Kentucky Oaks in 2008. She won the Alabama that same year, went on to be champion 3-year-old filly, which was the first champion. I say first, quite frankly, the only champion that we've ever campaigned in our own silks, and her likability factor was just off the charts. She was one of those small fillies. The only reason we had her in the first place was really she was too small for the sales market. She just tried her tail off every single time, always ran her race, and kind of, everybody says the ride, the journey, but it was the ride she took us on. Was just so much fun, because it was our first kind of association with Larry Jones, who's such an unbelievable horseman. I mean, if there's no one better. There might be his equal, but there's no one that's a better horseman than Larry Jones. And he's also such a great guy, and he's really become like family. And that was really all through that Proud Spell experience. And so just the fun that we had with her and winning those races. But as far as a moment, I can remember we're all superstitious. We all find different places to watch the races. You see one group over here, so I got to go over here, and we all do this dumb stuff. I got to watch on this monitor. We're all idiots. But when she ran in the Oaks, it was I was dating my excuse me, Kenny. I was dating my now wife, and so we went off by ourselves just to kind of get away from it, just outside one of the suites there at Churchill where they had us. And she wins the race. She wins the Kentucky Oaks. And I remember walking back in through the door and seeing Dad come out of the suite, and that run. It's like the movie where you run into each other in slow motion. Yeah. Normally it's a romantic scene, but in this one it was Pop and I, and we had just had this big bear hug, and you go down to the winner's circle, and it's you're literally floating. It's just a great feeling, and I don't know how you top that one as far as a memory.
I remember Proud Spell well. I remember that moment well, being there, and I believe I'd interviewed Larry earlier in the day about Proud Spell. Mm-hmm. And knowing you and knowing your dad for years, he was so kind to me when I first started covering this sport back in the early 80s. You try to be the objective reporter. But now when the moment happens and you actually know somebody and you get to know them well, I was so happy when your dad was kind of hoisting up that trophy, that's why it's about, because the work he's put into it and the devotion he's had to the sport, and some misses, more hits, but a few misses, some heartaches. That all adds up. It's a nutty business, isn't it? I mean, in a lot of ways, you really got to love the business, because you just don't know. You could take, I'm sure, like you said, Proud Spell probably didn't look that much. Wouldn't blow you away if you took her in the ring until you saw her run.
Yeah, no, it is a bizarre thing we do for a living, and you recognize that when you start talking to somebody that doesn't know anything about horse racing. You start explaining, and sometimes you catch yourself, boy, this is a crazy business. But if you're in it, you love it completely. And you love it for all the the reasons that people may not see on the racetrack. It's the behind the scenes. It's the horses. It's the people. It's the relationships. It's everything. I love everything about horse racing, and not we've got our problems, no question, but at the root of it, it's just a very special sport to be part of.
Did you like right now? You handle the bloodstock at Airdrie. Sales are going to become. Sales have just happened at Phasig. Sales are going to be coming up at Keeneland. How's the market out there right now as far as if you want to get into buying a horse and they call you up and say, Bret, I heard you on the horse racing show. I want to buy a horse. I mean, is it a good time to buy a horse?
Well, we have had the bad press this year, but amidst that bad press, there have been a lot of things that have actually been very, very encouraging. One of which, just from a Kentucky standpoint, is we're running for a lot more money than we ever have. I mean, the purses right now and the increase in purses you've seen over the last year has been incredible. So what I would say is that as far as the potential earnings that you now have when you buy a racehorse are as strong or stronger than they've ever been, or at least recently, because you've got these bigger purses out there. You've got a private market that is extremely strong. I mean, we all see these private purchases that are going on out there, headed by Saul Kuman's group, and there's so many people that want to come in and buy a piece of these horses, and that gives somebody that has just won an impressive race a way financially to take a lot of money off the table and to limit the risk that we all know comes with horse racing.
Right.
And then you've got, if you have a nice colt, you've got these stallion prices have escalated again. That's gotten to be always has been a very competitive market, but you're starting to see that really kind of ratchet up as well. So if you can go in and buy a horse right now, I think you've got a better chance than you've had recently to make money with it, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Everything you say makes sense.
My wife would disagree, and most of the people that you could bring in here as witnesses would disagree.
How's your dad?
He's good. He's good, Kenny.
Oh, good. Such a nice man.
Well, thank you. He's my hero, and he's been a big fan of yours for a long, long time.
I voted for him. I don't get too political, but I voted for Bret Jones when he ran for governor. There, I said it.
It's a controversial stance, but
it's not like I haven't taken a few.
No.
But that's one most people would agree with me on, I think.
Well, thank you. No, Dad's great and loves the business today as much as he ever has. And I was telling somebody the other day that he gets the entries for all of the horses that are either sired by our sires or out of our mares, or we might own them, and he'll sit down and he'll watch the overwhelming majority of all those races. And it doesn't matter if it's the big race at Saratoga, or if it's the 15 2L at some other track. It's when you got that love for it, you never lose that, and he's got it, and got it big time.
Bret, I really thank you for being here, and congratulations on all your success with Airdrie Stud, with the Breeders'Cup Board, with the Kentucky Racing Commission, and thanks for just for coming out here. It's hard to get people want to talk to us, but they don't want to come out here. Only a few will venture to this undisclosed location in Kentucky where we do this.
I love the show. I was given a heads up on the show by our mutual friend Lenny Schulman,
Yes.
and we got to get the word out even more so than is happening, because this is a great show. You bring great guests in. I haven't been nearly as interesting because I've just talked about horse racing, but I love it when you bring some of these guys in, you get off topic, and
with Lenny, we always do.
Yeah, and that's where some of the really best stuff comes from. But it's a great show, and I really appreciate you letting me be part of it.
Favorite music group?
Favorite music, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, and the Talking Heads. So we're kind of
you're too young for that.
Those have always kind of been my three.
Those are classic. You're too young for that.
It's and that's why I said is I wish I could get the word out on social media more, but I'm a bit of an old soul. I got old music taste, and am not nearly as good on Twitter as I should be based on my age.
Well, that's okay. If we ever get David Byrne and and Bruce Springsteen, or
listen, we got to get Bruce Springsteen buying a racehorse, because he's got his daughter is involved in.
You know what? I've covered Jessica. Yeah. I've done some equestrian deals, and I called when she won up in up in New York, just outside of Rye. I should have remembered that, but anyway, it was an event, and she won it. I covered one of her events when she won, when she competed in Washington, where the Wizards play and the Capitals play. So I've actually met her briefly a couple of times, and I've never met Bruce. I have friends that I work with that have met him and talked about how nice he is. And
well, of all the conversations I've had with John Kimmel over the years, we've got a great relationship with John. I'd say 87% of them are me pushing him to try to get Bruce Springsteen in, because he's got the relationship. He's friends with him and family friends with him. And anyway, we'll keep pushing him.
All right, come back and see us, would you?
Thank you, Kenny. I'd love to.
Anytime. Thank you, Bret Jones, Airdrie Stud. Need a horse, talk to him. Sales coming up, really. Great family, great farm, and, of course, Breeders'Cup Board and the Kentucky Racing Commission. And you're saying, is there more? Yes, there's more coming up when we come back here on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show, episode 30. Glad that you've tuned in on YouTube or in Google Play or in iTunes. I have known this young man for many years. What a solid career he's had. Willie Martinez, approaching 3,400 wins, close to $80 million in career earnings, 150 stakes wins, and this is 30 years of riding. Wow. Riding titles all over the place, from Turfway to Tampa Bay to Keeneland and the old Hialeah. And Willie joins us now. Willie, good to catch up.
Hey, same here, Kenny. Good talking to you, buddy.
So what's the key, man? 30 years of any profession is tough, especially in what a jockey has to go through to keep the weight and back and forth and stay in condition. What's the key to all this?
Well, for the most part, I thank God that I've been able to stay healthy, even though I've been, banged up here and there, because, as jockeys, that we go through our ups and downs, and, physically, mentally, and whatever is put in front of you. But, I've been, blessed that I haven't been able to, cut a lot of weight or anything like that. I've been naturally lightweighted for most of my career. So that's a big plus, unlike most of jockeys that, they fight their weight and they have to go out there and reduce and all that. So I've just been blessed on my side. So I understand, how lucky I've been.
You come from Puerto Rico, where you grew up. You come over around 87, 88 to the States. You're a hot walker and a groom, and then you get your break and you win around 89, I guess, at Tampa Bay Downs. You broke your maiden.
I did. I rode my first race at Tampa Bay Downs. Finger Lakes, upstate New York, is where I first landed, on the ground of a racetrack. And from there, I just built, the foundation and went over to Tampa and, started building up my career from then. Then I went on to many other racetracks, and I honestly exceeded my expectations and above, beyond. So, It's been a long road.
And again, we talked about the racing titles. Breeders' Cup Sprint 2012 with Trinidad, who went on to be the champion sprinter for Willie Martinez that year. Willie, you've always, what has impressed me just as much as your riding style. Chili Willie, by the way, is that nickname still good for you?
It's still solid. It's still solid.
And what a compliment it is that, Willie Martinez is not going to make any drastic, erratic move out there. He's going to make the move when he needs to make it. And, that's got to be the toughest thing, isn't it? To me, I can't even relate to riding a horse at the speed and that closeness that you guys deal with. But, the split-second timing of it all is just always fascinates me, no matter how many times I watch you or any of the other jockeys ride.
Yeah, that is correct. Obviously, in any sports, like I always say, people want the young blood, the fresh blood, the youngsters and all that. So I have been there, and I understand that. And for an older rider that been doing it for as long as I had, or others been doing it longer, you have to, prove yourself again and all that. But I always believe that, we do have the edge with the experience, and that takes a big play in certain races. So, I have been lucky. I have been able to ride among the best. And like I say, I exceeded, beyond my expectations, and been able to provide for my family, help my family, and I'm blessed. It's been a blessed career for me.
Well, in a career that's still going on, like I say, 30 years into it, and what I was leading up to a few minutes ago was how you've always taken a stand, too, which is not always easy to do, but you've been willing to take a stand for jockeys' insurance, for health care for jockeys, for basically, as you talked about, you've not had to worry so much about cutting weight, but also the health of jockeys down the road, those that do have to do drastic weight cuts at times. Not always popular decisions among some of the hierarchy, let's say. I think you were banned from Churchill for a little bit, weren't you? They threw you out because you wanted to help assist the jockeys, you and several other guys.
That is correct, Kenny. Some years ago, I rode the Kentucky circuit for, around 15 years or so. And we always, I always believe in standing up for the little guys, the guys that can, speak louder than others. But it is unity at the end of the day. And, when you together, you can accomplish more. And at the times we were fighting, insurance issues and all that. And we always felt like the industry can provide and do so much more for the riders and exercise riders. And, that's just besides the horses are the number one priority, of course. But, for as far as the safety and all that for the riders and healthcare and all that, we're self-employers, independent contractors. And it's tough. We don't have a contract. We don't have, I get hurt today, but if I don't get out of the couch, I can't make any money. I don't collect money like that. So it's been tough, but I think the industry little by little has been improving a lot. But that was a turning point as far as, jockeys' healthcare and, thank God for the Jockeys Guild and disabled riders funds. They stand up, they always stand up high for us, and they always believe, and that's what it all comes down to. If you believe, you stand up for it.
We're talking with Willie Martinez. Willie, that was a bold move that you and about a dozen other jockeys made. Life's good at Churchill Downs right now, right? I mean, you've ridden in the Kentucky Derby and all, so I guess everybody's happy again. And many of the things that you guys wanted then have been implemented by not just Churchill, but other tracks around the country with the bold stance that you and some of the others took.
Yeah, that is correct, though, Kenny. We always felt like at the time, at least to my family, I'm worth more than $100,000 coverage.
Right.
So, to say the least, it's kind of crazy because we are professional athletes, and a lot of people, they see these guys. Don't get me wrong, jockeys make a great living, but not all of them are on certain levels. So we have to fight for the ones that are struggling and have families as well. And it's a tough game. It's a day by day game. We not always guarantee when we're going to walk out there and come back in. It's the only sports that an athlete is being followed by an ambulance and a horse. So the magnitude of the danger around us is at high level at all times. So it's always good to feel like we're standing up for ourselves and get the respect that the riders deserve.
I mentioned this to an NTRA executive one time. He thought I was nuts, but I've said this on the show before too. I've covered MMA, and this MMA is a big deal. Young people like MMA. They like the excitement. They like the violence of it. Okay, that's just it. That's the way it is. I said, you should play up more. We don't want to overdo it, but I think it would get young people in there if they understood more, and maybe even some more fans, like football fans and things, come over to horse racing more, if they realize what great pound-for-pound athletes jockeys are and how rough it is and how fast they're going in such close proximity to another horse. That's a thrilling part about racing that doesn't always get mentioned or played up a lot, and I think that'd be a great PR move, in my opinion, is to promote Willie Martinez and the other jockeys, especially those that have been doing it for so many years.
We appreciate that so much, and you are correct. I think I had tried many sports throughout my life. When I was younger, I always thought I was going to be a baseball player, professional baseball player, and I can say I was fairly good, winning MVP championship batters at an early age. But the odds was against me. My size, always, play a toll, and I even tried boxing. So, um, you know, I say pound for pounds, I cannot compare any other athletes like jockeys. MMA fighters, boxers, they might cut weight 6 months from now prior to a big fight. These guys, they go in and out to cut weight on daily basis,
Hmm.
every day, and that just shows you. I mean, to go out there and sit on top of a 1,100 pounds animal with a mind on their own, um, it's a lot. So jockeys are, by far, if not the fittest athletes, they got to be in the top three fittest athletes that I can consider, in my mind.
Oh, definitely. So I got to ask you about your baseball. What position did you play?
I played several positions, but my main position was shortstop.
Yeah. Do,
Yeah,
do,
so
do you have a favorite team or player or anything you still follow?
I was I look up to the obviously old school, like the Reggie Jacksons,
Oh, yeah.
Ossie Smith, all those guys, and in Puerto Rico where I'm from, if you don't see a kid in the corner, somewhere in the corner with a pair of boxing gloves or a baseball bat, you're not doing it right. Something is not right. So you grew up like that, and we have produced a lot of champions as
Oh,
boxers
yeah.
and hell of athletes, big names as far as baseball, and so that's kind of a driving force behind a culture.
If a jockey comes up to you, and maybe they do, I hope they do, some of the younger guys that are listening, you ought to ask Willie Martinez for advice, because you don't have a 30-year career and over 3,400 wins like he has by just showing up. What advice do you give them as far as, watching weight, maintaining their health now so they don't have problems when they get into their late 30s or into their 40s?
Well, my main advice that I always tell young riders is stay humble and you won't stumble.
Yeah.
Being humble, that's just it's a freebie. Like we say, it doesn't cost you anything, and just focus and set your goals in front of you, and sky is the limit. I was just uh, a little kid from a town called Santurce, Barrio Obrero, and never thought in my mind that I'd be in the derby. So I got to ride a handful of derbies, 4 or 5 derbies, and went on travel to Dubai and won several big races. So if I could do it, I know any young kid can do it. You just got to go after your dreams, and just believe in yourself. Believing in yourself is the main key.
I remember when you had 7 wins in one day at Turfway Park. Pretty good day, Willie.
Yeah.
Pretty good day.
Those are the good old days. We used to. It seems like back in the days I did that quite often. Not the 7 wins, of course. That's just a big accomplishment. But the 3 bangers, the 5 wins a day. We did that pretty often, and it was good timing. Now is we have a different generation, and a lot of good young riders out there. And at the end of the day, they just got to always remember that it's all about the horse. The horses are the bigger stars, and we play a big role, of course. But if you don't give the horse the credit that they deserve, you're never going to get yours.
I used to tell friends, everybody thinks because I cover it that I just can spew out winners. I said, if I could pick winners all the time, I'd just retire. I'd be living in the Caribbean, eating grapes. But they say, I'm going up Turfway. I said, bet Willie Martinez. I said, who's he riding? I said, I don't know. Just go ahead and bet him. I said, if you bet him every race, you'll probably win half of them at least.
It was the good old days, good days.
As far as now, do you have a goal of how much longer you're going to go? I mean, you're still riding, and like I say, a 30-year career, over 3,400 wins, a terrific career you've had, Willie. Do you? I guess you just keep going till you don't want to?
Well, I mean, I say until my body tells me any different. I feel good right now, and I base out of Tampa, Florida is main home, and then I come up in the summers to Prescott. So it's a lot easier on my body if I gotta take it easy in the winter time and come here and work harder. So I try to keep it as easy as I can for myself, my body and mind, and I'm a new chapter in my life where I'm gonna be a dad in November.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And my fiance and I are looking forward to to have this great life ahead of us. And so it is a different chapter. I don't know what else to do. I can't sit in front of a desk or anything like that. So I have to find. I don't have a backup plan. Let's put it that way. So I'm just going day by day. But it is kind of driving me crazy because I know the gap is closing, and every time you look at the calendar, you know that you can't rewind the tape. It's just closing the gap quick. And so I have to figure out something. I'm not sure what it is. I like to say I always would like to be somehow involved with racing, but I also want to have my space and drift a little bit away from it because I have paid my dues and done enough. I think,
Right.
enough time to it. But, who knows? Maybe a jock agent, maybe a guild representative, something like that I can stay involved, and keep my mind active.
Well, all the things you've done in the past to help jockeys today and continue, the Guild seems like a perfect fit. I mean, the agent as well, but the Guild definitely needs to have you and people like you on there still fighting for the jockeys and racing conditions for them and health conditions, et cetera. I really mean that.
I appreciate it. I think it would be a great thing. I'm really thinking, seriously about it. Obviously, I haven't got to that point to talk to Terry Mates or Johnny Velasquez, the two main men in the Jockeys Guild. But I think given the opportunity, if it ever happens, I think I should still seriously think about it because it's something that it is in my comfort zone, I should say.
Tell Jamie we said hello.
We will. I appreciate it. She's amazing. She's the one that she loved you guys' show, and then she's like, I can't wait to get you there. I'm like, okay. And at first I thought, well, this is like a prank. But knowing the way she is, when she says she's going to do something, she get it done, and here we are. So I appreciate it, and I want to give a shout out to her too for being a
Us too.
great
It's
woman.
great
Yeah.
to catch up with you. And I'll tell you, I know how your conditioning program is going to be now in the next few years. You're going to be chasing a baby around, so now
Yeah.
you don't have to worry. You never had to worry about weight anyway. You never will now. You'll be running around after a kid. That'll be the Willie Martinez training method. Have a child and keep running around after it.
Yeah, if it'll be a little Sheila Willie, a hyper dad, it's going to be a problem for me. But it'll keep me light.
Oh, that's right. Willie, it's great to catch up. We'll do it again down the road, okay?
For sure, Jimmy. I appreciate it, man. It's an awesome opportunity, and I hope God bless you all, and thank you for having me.
And you too. Thanks very much. Willie Martinez, what a great guy and what an outstanding career he has had and still going 30 years later as a jockey. Stay with us more on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back in, getting ready to episode 30 coming to an end. Wow. Great guest today, Bret Jones, a lot of insight. I thought he did a great job. You had to ask, and he handled it well about the Breeders' Cup decision, go Santa Anita, stay at Santa Anita, and what's going on with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and the lawsuit that's still going on and probably will about the Kentucky Derby and Mr. West suing. Of course, he had maximum security. And Bret with some good insight always into the business. It's good to see young people. See, years from now, when you or Ben's having a show, you can have me on. I'll say, I remember you guys years and watched you grow up and how well you've done. And Willie Martinez, who really did take a bold stand where he's talked about we need better insurance and all that, and this was not popular. And Willie, and he'll tell you this, he wasn't like he was one of the top 5 or 6 jockeys. He was a good, solid jockey, got rides, but, that was a bold move.
Getting kicked out of Churchill Downs, I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Now you think about it, and it just wouldn't happen. But back then, a jockey made, not even demands, but if you ask a question, it was almost like you were stifled. No, you don't ask anything of us. We let you ride our horses, so ride them. Not just Churchill, but the owners in general. A lot of farms and things, a lot of trainers felt that way. That's been a big change.
Big turning point for the sport.
I guess you and Ben will probably want to get a guild together here pretty soon on the Horse Racing Show, won't you? Come talk to Scott and me.
Yeah, the petition's already going around.
How many signatures do you have? 2?
Exactly.
Yeah, we're a little shy there. We've only got 2 so far.
That's okay. You'll probably only get 2, by the way, but that's all right.
Yep.
Again, that was fun, though, to just catch up with those guys. And, I think eventually this lawsuit's dropped. That's just speculation. I don't know what they can do. I mean, it clearly says in the rules that the Racing Commission, it's like if, you go to somebody's backyard, you got backyard rules if you're playing cornhole.
Yep.
Okay, and that's it, or, whatever you're doing. And there's rules there, and in each state that you go there and you abide by those rules if you're in the race. So I don't see how anything will change. And maybe if Maximum Security, who's doing really well right now, goes on and has a good year, finishes up strong, maybe that will put a little salve on it and this will all go away.
Do you know if he's going to race in the Travers?
Maybe. Maybe not. See, that's it. It's always been maybe not with this horse since the Derby. Remember, we kept waiting around. They put him in that allowance race that he lost. Then he bounced back and won the Haskell. But Code of Honor is going to be in there. That'll be interesting. Owendale is going to be in there. We're going to talk more about the Travers because that's your favorite midsummer race, isn't it?
As of right now.
As of right now. Scott's playing in pain today. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, thank you. No problem.
He's tough. Yeah, the Travers is big. Next week, guess what we're going to talk about?
The Travers?
The Travers, yes, right here. Please join us then for episode 31. Thanks to Mr. Thomas Kenny, Scott Hall as always, and Ben Chaffins. I'm Kenny Rice, and thank you for tuning in and listening to episode 30 of the Horse Racing Show.